So today I'm going to go over one of my favorite films of all time by one of my favorite directors. And the reason I like this film and the reason I like watching early works of directors almost more than I like watching their greatest hits is because you get to see what style they're headed for when they don't even have that much money. And this film is a great example of that. So we're going to go over The Killing by Stanley Kubrick. Now, there are certain elements of this film that I'll go over and explain why I think it's one of his best films, even though it is so early in his career. Now, I'm going to go over those because I've seen some footage. I believe it was like a commentary track by the producer James B. Harris. And that goes over, instead of Kubrick himself going over how this film was made, it's his producer. So it's still a very reliable source, close to the source as possible. I truly do think, though, even if you don't like classic films and the look of it, the way that people talk, it's kind of theatrical. I get it. This is a film I recommend solely based off its complexity, solely based off its entertainment, solely based off its influence to the films we see today, a la like Memento, The Prestige, The Dark Knight Rises, what other ones? Tarantino films, Pulp Fiction. So you know how those films do a non-linear storytelling? And it's been so interesting in the modern age because it's kind of revamped the way we pay attention to movies. It's when films have linear storytelling, when you watch enough, you can kind of follow the plot from A. And even when you're like around like LMNOP, you can understand where the story's going. You can almost predict where the story is going to end up and where the movie is going to end. But with The Killing, this movie by Stanley Kubrick, that completely changed the game. And I mean, when you're in 1956, the style of storytelling, like I said, again, very theatrical. And there were some great films coming out of the 50s. Don't misunderstand me. The way these films were, the way these films were told in a storytelling context was not like this film. So it starts out by having a scenario of a racetrack being robbed on, the day of the horse races. And as the film goes on, it starts out with that scene, then it goes into each individual character. And once it goes back in time and analyzes what happened and how they came about this plot to rob this racetrack, this little gang of like thieves, basically, then it goes into back in time, how they conceived it, how they planned it out, who they talked to, and how it actually happened in the end. So it's like taking a plot from the future, telling it by going back in the past, to then at the end return to the future. It's outstanding. And you know what? It seems very complex and it seems very messy. The reason I love this film, though, is it's not messy at all. It actually gets to the point very fast. It's so sharp in its delivery of the point it wants to get across. It's so sharp in its delivery of the plot that you never miss a beat. You are there with them all the way, just like Memento. Memento, I kind of dozed off at some points, not going to lie. Just like Pulp Fiction. Because you're realizing as you watch the story that you're not experiencing time going from A to B. You're experiencing time going from A to C to go back to B, and then you're going to skip to D, and then you're going to go back to A at the end of the movie. It's so awesome to see a movie like that, especially for a movie, I don't want to say like movie buff, but especially someone who watches a lot of movies and feels like they've gotten to a certain point where with traditional films, you can go follow the plot from A to B, especially if it's very predictable like a romantic comedy. I can totally do that. With movies like this, though, it grabs my attention because it actually respects me as an audience member by saying, okay, we'll believe you'll be able to retain this information. Not only that, but it'll make your experience. It gives me the most like special experience when you're watching a movie and you feel like you've been duped. It's like a magic trick. And at the end of the movie, there's a scene where Sterling Hayden is making off with the money. He's got a briefcase full. He's ready to leave and go on a plane. I forget where they're going, but obviously leave the scene of the crime. And they made off with the money. They got it. And then suddenly, as their bags are being taken from the carrier to the airplane, one of them flies off onto the airmac, and boom, the suitcase flies open, the money flies away. And it's almost as if you did all of these things to not end up with the thing you sought at the beginning. And it's a huge magic trick. That's what these films are. They're a huge magic trick. They're a play on your interpretation of events. But also, what I love about this style of non-linear storytelling is the fact that when you see a scene and then you get more context to the scene, it changes the way you see the first scene. And that's what I love about watching a movie. That's what I love about even real life. Is because if you go to work and say you work in an office, and I just give you an office scene, someone goes to get water, someone's stacking papers, someone's just in their cubicle typing on the computer. That all has different context once you follow if you go back in time and you follow each individual employee, you go back to their house and you see the events that led them to where they are today. It all makes the story very interesting, and it's a great exploration of character that we don't necessarily get all the time, even from linear storytelling, because people get confused that, this is hero's journey. Hero starts here. Hero doesn't have anything. Hero goes here. Hero gets it. Hero leaves, learns things at the end. I personally don't like those stories as much as getting context to each individual character, whether they be a good person or not a good person, and seeing the decisions that they make on the way to their supposed goal. I realized some of that kind of got a little messy as the way I was explaining it. I realized not everyone necessarily understands what the fuck I'm talking about, and that's great. Listen, just watch The Killing, please. Just watch The Killing by Stanley Kubrick, please. It's a awesome film. Sterling Hayden kills it in this movie. I mean, there's almost, in a way, in some of the dialogue scenes, reminds me of an early David Mamet film. It's very sharp, very witty. Jim Thompson, the writer, was honestly kind of pissed because Kubrick didn't use a lot of his written scripts and didn't stick to the book, The Killing. But as you know, Kubrick was just not having it. He didn't give a flying Frenchman's fuck whether you wrote a nice little book. He's going to make a grand movie. And you know what? He made an awesome movie. And if you want to check it out, you can either, this is a Criterion Collection movie, but I believe it's on YouTube. I've watched this probably 10 times. Outstanding film, outstanding acting. And if you want to get into a classic film, and that'll kind of lead the way to your newfound love of classic films, just start with this one, man. It's so awesome. Thank you.